What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Winners Ways podcast. This is your podcast for business growth. If you want to, supersize your business and grow, this is your podcast. And today, I'm super thrilled to welcome a guest. We have Ryan Niddel with us. He is the CEO of Ryan Niddel Strategies. I want to learn about that strategies because I heard Ryan is the guy that can help you to grow your business. He has proven that because he has grown many businesses. So we are going to be speaking and learning from Ryan today, and I'm excited. Hey, Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, my friend, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
All right, this is cool. So, do you want to introduce yourself to my audience so that they can get to know you better?
I would love to. So, I'm Ryan, obviously, really a simple guy from the Midwest. I live in Columbus, Ohio, have always kind of grown up around various parts of Ohio, have been fortunate to have an engineering degree as a background. It's kind of how my thought processes have been developed, starting with the end in mind and working backwards. That eventually led into starting as a salesperson for a startup web hosting company out of Akron, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what web hosting was. I didn't know what digital marketing was. I just knew I could sell. I had experience in the automotive industry previous to working at the hosting company, and was very fortunate to start off on this ground floor of a really different way to approach web hosting. I figured that out with my partners. And inside of about 2 years, we took this little company from 10,000 clients when I came on board to about 580,000 clients 2 years later. During that timetable, I was fortunate to take over as president and CEO and became one of the partners in the business. Went through a couple capital raises as we looked at international markets like Brazil and Portugal. And from there, we ended up selling that company off to a subsidiary of GoDaddy, the big web hosting company. So that was the first fun thing. And I thought at 29 years old, right, about 10 years ago now, I thought I had the Midas touch. I thought I had everything figured out in business. And by 30, halfway through my 30th year, I realized how little I really knew. I started a high-risk merchant processing company, processing online credit card payments for, gambling sites and nutraceutical offers and all types of things. And I'll tell you, inside of about 12 months, I was flat broke. All the money I made from the exit was gone. And I miscalculated ratios. I took my eye off the ball. My personal life was in a little bit of a shamble as well. Admittedly, a much different person at 30 than I'm at 38 or 39, where I had, maybe multiple different girlfriends and different things that were important to me, that my eye was not linearly focused on where it should have been. I was a little spread wide, if you will. And so not my proudest moments, but that led to a couple rental properties of mine going into foreclosure, a truck being repossessed. And I got to the fortunate privilege, my friend, of being able to rebuild my life at 30 with having experience from engineering to sales to small business growth. I mean, our web hosting company did 50 million in revenue in its peak year, and then a complete failure, and got to sit back and say, gosh, at 30, what am I going to do now? And I didn't know, right? I didn't want to go back into a path I'd already been. So of all things, I jumped into custom clothing, right? As you're listening, I'm a little bit of a larger stature gentleman. I used to be an amateur bodybuilder, so I'm 6'2", and gosh, right now I'm 265, but back then I would have been 6'2" and maybe 285, right? A pretty large, muscular guy, maybe not so stomach large, maybe, muscle, shoulders and chest wise. So got into custom clothing, and I learned haberdashery. I found someone that taught me how to measure, taught me all about wool, and started traveling the country selling custom clothing to men and women specifically. And while it was a great industry, it wasn't scalable for me, right? Because it was the exact time for money shift that we all, I think, eventually acknowledge and want to get out of, where I was, had clients in New York City, had clients in Chicago, had clients in Southern Kentucky. And part of my business model was physically seeing the individuals in person, presenting options to them, measuring them, and then coming back to hand deliver the clothing. Well, at that point, right, I was just I didn't actually declare bankruptcy, but I feel like I probably should have. But on the backside of that, I'm in a 98 Cadillac sedan DeVille. It's tan. It's got the tan leather interior. It's got the bench seat across the front. And I'm driving the 9 hours from Columbus, Ohio to New York City. Wow. I'm waking up at 2 a.m, driving there to meet people at 1, spend from 1 until 5 with them, then leave the city and drive back as far as I could, then sleeping in my car on the side of the road.
Wow.
And it's not a poor me story. It was the fact of I didn't have enough capital sitting aside to enjoy the luxuries of a nice hotel room or, great food. It was trying to rebuild those coffers so that I could make different decisions. And as I was going through that season of life, I started realizing not only the power of what I put in my mind, right? Things like, oddly enough, this car didn't have a CD player. It had actual tapes, right? It was old enough it had a tape player.
I know those.
Yeah, right. And some of you listening might not have any idea what a tape is, but it's this little square disc that you used to put into a receiver. And so I bought books on cassette, and I was listening to Tony Robbins things on cassette. I was listening to Jim Rohn's things on cassette, and really just saying, like, man, there's just a different world out there that I haven't considered before. There's a different way of looking at life. And through that, it afforded me the luxury of connecting back with some of my incredibly intelligent web developers from the hosting company, where they helped me develop an app for the custom clothing world that shortened down the supply chain, because I was noticing a lot of my counterparts were having to remake suits, and there were all these things that were going wrong. So, well, gosh, we could just take a picture and cross-reference a picture with some data points versus what we physically measure. We could probably cut down on those failure points. And so we did. So we developed an app, and that app is still being used by, 50 or 60 clothing companies across the country, maybe even more now. And that eventually led me to becoming a partner in a wool manufacturing company. See, I couldn't help myself at some point, right? To in my opinion, to grow true wealth, you need to have a level of ownership in something. It's great to be an employee, but if you don't have equity, you don't really get that big leverage point at some point in the future.
I like that. Take a pause. Let's repeat that because I think that is core. This is the second time that I'm hearing that message just within this month. If you don't have equity, you can't build wealth. Can you please just restate that?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll put actual numbers to this. I think it's impactful. When I was a salesman for another business, right, a clothing or I'm sorry, not a clothing business, but a automobile business. Right, I sold high-end cars. I did well for myself at that time in life. I would have said I made, maybe $250,000 a year. And so that to me is very good money. And in the Midwest, as a 27, 26-year-old man, you live very well with that amount of money.
Yeah.
But unfortunately in that, right, you're losing, I'll say 50% to taxes. That's right. So, right, all of a sudden that I'll keep it easy, 240 grand, I'm left with $120,000 at the end of the year if I didn't spend any money. And right, that's okay, right? We all have to pay our part. But as I'm doing that and helping that dealership become more successful, I don't get anything from that other than my paycheck, which is brilliant because it's great in the short term, but it's not providing real wealth. It would be what I do with that money. Well, to me, when you shift into an equity position, where let's say I had owned 10% of that dealership somehow, some way. Well, every dollar that I'm making the company, a company itself trades typically, meaning sells, on a multiple of its net cash flow, right? Multiple on its profit. And so a dealership right now would sell at, a 10 to 15 time multiple of profit. So every dollar that I would be making as an owner to the bottom line, right? So there's $100,000 falls down to the bottom line in profit. I'm a 10% owner. So 10% of that would have went to me. But really, if we went to sell the company, take that $10,000 and multiply it by 10, and that's what I would have gotten, and it wouldn't require any additional work. And that's really one of the things that has been interesting for me throughout my life is I eventually got into a level of consulting. I sold another business. I did a owner finance deal of my custom clothing business, wanted more time and more scalability. I started a CBD business, direct to consumer, in 2016 and sold that off in December of 2018 to a private equity firm. And from 2018 until 2020, really just consulted with companies and private individuals, right? I'll call them solopreneurs or small business owners, companies that have that, typically 20 million in revenue annually or under. And I started realizing from conversations with them, I had enough belief in myself and what I was bringing to the table that I could say to them, look, you might not have the cash flow to afford my services, but what if we created a system where if we grew by a certain percentage, I became your partner? What if I became an equity partner in your business? So you have no downside. If I don't know what I'm talking about and I'm not good, which is a possibility, then you're not out anything at all.
Yeah.
And if we only win a little bit, you still don't pay me anything. So now you're up. But if you set the number, if you want to grow from $100,000 a month to $200,000 a month, and that's your number, when we hit $200,000 a month, I would like to be able to become a partner in your business.
Wow.
And so there were, gosh, at my peak, I think it was 17 different businesses
Wow.
that had accepted some variation of that exact conversation.
I
And
like
so,
that, Ryan.
right, that to me is a way to start to build wealth. When all of a sudden I'm taking my knowledge, what I believe a business should consider going through,
Wow.
I'm helping install that into a company. So I'm getting leverage on my intellectual property.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a team of people in the office that I'm sitting in that help support me in doing that. So it's not just me now exchanging time for money. I've got people to help support it. And then it starts to, I don't want to call it passive income because I think that's such a misnomer, right? I'm not a passive investor. I want to know what's going on. I want to impact change. I want to help with sales and marketing and operations. And so by the nature of that, the businesses that I'm a partner in of all different shapes and sizes, they're not passive investments, but what's not happening is I'm not working 40 hours a week inside of 17 different businesses. Number one, there's not enough hours in the day. Number two, it sounds pretty miserable to me.
Yeah.
But number three, we've got enough leverage built where now maybe it's 2 hours a week per business, and I'm still getting dividends, distributions, payments from all those businesses every month, no matter what goes on. And so that to me is that shift from like, how do you become rich, right? Rich to me, making $240,000 a year selling automobiles, I felt rich back then. I felt like I've made it, right? I had a Rolex watch and a nice car, and life was great. But then becoming wealthy is to me creating these streams of income that are coming in from multiple sources that aren't an exact change of time for money, where I love to work, so I don't step away too often. But if I do, the businesses would still continue, income still come into the business, and thus income's eventually going to come into my pocket as well if everything goes the right way.
So that is so great, Ryan. And I see that you are creating a win-win situation. You are helping all these businesses to grow. And at the same time, you are also taking ownership, because that means you have a skin in the game. You want them to succeed. And that's obviously you work hard to make sure that they continue to succeed. I want to hear from you. You shared with us your low moments. Yes, you started out well in your 20s, making good income. Then you lost it all. And you said you rebuilt yourself. Can you tell us, what did you do? How did you? And I took some ideas from you, which I also practice, by the way. I listen to all these great guys, Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, just for them to motivate me. I love all these great speeches from all these guys. Apart from that, what did you do? How did you, because that alone, losing everything, some people can commit suicide. Some people will think they can never get it back. So how was your story different?
Yes, that's a wonderful question. And I'd like to add just a little bit of context to it. When I say the lost everything, right? In the web hosting world, I'd experienced tremendous success. When I say tremendous success, right? The company had grown so rapidly that private planes were a pretty normal way of traveling. None of myself or my partners wanted for anything, right? We lived very, very well and was very fortunate for that. And then as the next business collapsed, I remember very specifically looking at my bank account, and I had $2,200 left to my name. That's, $2,200 left. My rent payment, it wasn't even mortgage payment at that point, right? Because I was losing my rental properties. My rent payment was $2,700 a month. And I'm like,
how can you do that?
I have to figure something out. And so it was a low point. And for me, I don't say it caused me, but there was a certain causational pattern that I started getting into psychiatry and psychology, as I was curious, why were the behaviors that I had exhibited at 30 years old, how many times could I look back over my life and see that I had exhibited something comparable? Because my business didn't collapse in one instant, in one moment. I could see it coming for a long time and refuse to do something about it. So I'm like, why is this? How many times have I ran from conflict is what it really was before. right? And I'm looking back over the course of my life and I'm like, gosh, this is a repetitive pattern. This is something that's hardwired inside of me. And so it started studying psychology more specifically is a better way to say it. Started getting into some of the work of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and kind of some of the base level things you want. It's a nice, simple foundation.
Right.
That then eventually spun into the study of something called spiral dynamics, which is a fascinating, I'll say, system of belief that shows that there are levels of development that not only people go through, but also groups of people, cities, states, societies, and that as we go through different levels, we're exposed to new things, which then alters our belief of the current or previous levels. We won't get too deep into it, but all of a sudden these things started clicking where I'm saying, oh my gosh, there's a reason why at some points in life I'm craving power, right? I need to, slam my hand on a desk and say, this is the way we're doing it. Well, it's because there's part of me that's unactualized. There's part of me that I can work on to not have that be my response. What if in that same situation, my response was, okay, how can we get together and collectively work on the greatest good? How can we focus on the future versus, my way's the way. We got to do it this way. And so without going too far down too many rabbit holes, eventually that led into something I like to give credit where credit is due. And it led me to understanding that I didn't have a tribe, right? I felt rather alone. I think as an entrepreneur, as someone that owned a business, that people at one point had looked at me maybe that had achieved a level of success. And then I was very sheepish and, sold all the cars, sold all the watches, kind of went into hiding. Like, I don't know where my tribe is right now. I don't know where the people are that I can help. I can't share this with people because I'll be judged and I don't want to be judged. And so I eventually found something that is a men's group that was called, it still is called, Wake Up Warrior, by a gentleman named Garrett J. White, who became a friend of mine. And really what Wake Up Warrior created was an understanding of the system and process that I think any person can do, man or woman. So this is not, it doesn't matter your gender in this situation. But what Garrett suggests, which was incredibly beneficial for me, was that you should do a series of things before you leave the door, before you go out into the world. One was to meditate. And meditation doesn't have to mean, shaving your head like a Buddhist monk and putting on a robe. For me, meditation just meant sit in silence for 10 minutes, right? No phone, no distraction, just sit and try to calm your mind down. Do a little breath work. So it was meditate and journal. So when I would meditate, there's a stream of consciousness, I'll say, that started to come through me. And whether that's God or source or our intuition or unconscious or subconscious mind, who knows what it is, but there was something in there. And so the journaling would be getting out what was in my mind on paper. Mm-hmm. Another thing he suggests is there were two things there. Next thing he would suggest is to let the people that are closest to you know how much you love, honor, or appreciate them. So I would send a note of appreciation to my wife and daughter every day. I would text them. This is early in the morning, right? This is 6 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. So that when they would wake up, they'd see something that it wasn't generalized. It was very specific for something that had happened in the past day or two. So it would let them know I was really paying attention to them and what was going on. And then I'd share that same sort of message with someone that had come in my life before, but maybe not someone quite so close, like a friend or an acquaintance. Again, a text message, a phone call, something that someone knew that I was, in that sense of gratitude is really what it's doing. So it's you're meditating, you're journaling, you're sending notes of appreciation, getting to that sphere of gratitude. From there, it was read something business related, right? Read until a message comes is what it used to be. And right, sometimes that's 2 pages where that light bulb pops and, oh my gosh, I've been looking for this thing. And sometimes I might have to read for 30 or 40 pages, but you read until something comes. Then part of building that calcification of knowledge, in my opinion, is then sharing it, which is also what Garrett would say, that, when you read a book, it's one thing to read it. It's one thing to write it down, but if you can teach it to somebody else, then you start to really know it. So another point you got was for sharing what you learned with somebody else so that it would reinstill that. Then it was to drink a green smoothie, right? So it was kale and spinach and apple and oranges in a blender, really nasty stuff. It ended up tasting good eventually, but you're blending it up. It doesn't look very good. And then it was to sweat every day to get some sort of workout in.
Exercise.
So, exercise. So the inside of Wake Up Warrior, which we refer to as the Warrior's Way, that process is called the Core 4. So you do the Core 4 every day before you hit the door. So you're ready to go to war. Because outside your house, the world's kind of not at war with you. I like to think we're all, unified, but there's forces that are coming at you all the time. There's traffic that gets rough. There's something that goes wrong inside of business. it's like the world's not as much in your control. And so by doing those 8 things, which each a half point every day, which would be 4 total points, coupled with something that he called the general's tent, which is on Sunday, sitting down for an hour, looking at what worked over the past week, and then planning out the next week, planning out a date with my wife, 1-to-1, planning out a date with my daughter, 1-to-1, planning out a date with myself, 1-to-1, which is something that us entrepreneurs, I wasn't very good at, right? Doing something just for me, but it was physically then asking my wife out on a date every Sunday. It was asking my daughter out on a date. It was then letting them know, okay, on this day at this time, I'm going to go do something for me, coupled with 3 big initiatives for the week that would get me closer to my quarterly outcome. And so having that system, but then having a group of individuals that were also kind of at the same point in life that I was, looking for a tribe, had success or were successful, right? It was some of both, where there was an accountability because we were all running these little pods together. And so we could call this mentorship, we could call this coaching. I did all of it, right? These were investments. I took cash out of my pocket, which was very difficult back then, right? Because there wasn't a lot of cash sitting around. But that level of accountability and seeing these people that were playing, I'll call it the game of life at a very high level, producing extremely well, great marriages, great relationships, thriving businesses. It became an inspiration for me. It became something of, gosh, these guys can do it. They're giving me the roadmap of the simple things, right? It's success leaves clues. These things are typically very simple. And I had wanted to make them so complicated when it's really, can I just hit singles, right? Garrett would say success swings singles, right? We step up to the plate, the metaphorical plate in the game of business. We want to hit home runs all the time, right? We want the $1 million deal. We want we want whatever it is that we want. And there's something to be said for just, can you get a $10,000 deal every day for 100 days? Because that's, in theory, that could be easier. Right? So that was a really big part of it, is that shift in that time period of life. There was about an 18-month period during that rebuilding process where I stopped lying to myself. I stopped lying to others. I was held accountable by a group of people. I was, doing the core 4 and the general's tent and a couple other things that he suggests. And it just created this internal belief system that coupled with Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn and psychology books and reading, and like all these pieces are going together, where all of a sudden I went from feeling, I was insecure, right? I was doubting myself. I was doubting my business acumen, to this fact of, I don't want to say ultra prideful, but I'm focused, I'm diligent, I'm intentional. And so I think when all of us, right, as you're listening, I think when you're focused, you're diligent, you're intentional on anything for long enough, success eventually finds you, or you find success, whatever it wants to be. But what happened at other times in my life is I would stop before I got through the tough part. Right. And you don't know how long that tough part's going to be. Sometimes the tough part's a couple of weeks, and sometimes a couple of months. And I had a season that was a couple of years of tough stuff. Right. And those things collectively together are just now part of my daily life. I can't say that I do it every day right now. I can't say I do all 8 things every day, but I definitely work out every day. I definitely tell people how much I appreciate them every day. I definitely read every day. I definitely share every day. Right. There's some things now that aren't an external system. It's part of who I am, which is the shift to me. It's nothing that I'm doing. It just is me. And I think as you're listening, as you're considering business and how to grow it and scale it, it's when you stop trying to do something that's someone else's and you just make it your own. It's like everything just shifts, right? It just becomes so much easier. Where I don't feel guilty for not doing all 8 things that Garrett suggests you do. I feel really good because the 6 things that I do are ultra impactful for me. And they're the exact 6 things I need to do. And I can do them automatically because it feels good for me.
Oh, wow. That's so good. and there's so much information that you just gave to us. I like the wake up warrior idea. I want to ask you about your entrepreneurial journey. I know you started at the age of 10. I want to ask you about venture capitalists. I know you go into business, partner with people, help them grow their businesses. So there's a lot to ask you, Ryan. Let's start from your entrepreneurial journey, starting at the age of 10. What was it that motivated you to start that lawn mowing business back then?
I love this. I love that's where the journey starts. So for me, like I said, I grew up in a little town called Mansfield, Ohio. And if you've ever seen the movie Shawshank Redemption with the
I
old
love
prison,
that. I love that movie, by the way.
that prison was in my hometown.
Oh wow, I
That's
love
about
that
what we're known for.
movie.
And my family grew up middle America, right? I didn't know how much wealth we had or didn't have, but we had, normal cars and a normal house and things like that. And I wanted things that were outside of what my parents felt comfortable buying, right? It was back when Tommy Hilfiger cologne was something that you would wear. It was
I
back when
love that.
Nike Air Jordans were a big thing that they only release at certain times. And my parents said, look, it wasn't if I didn't know if they could afford them or not afford them. My parents just said, look, our value proposition, we don't see why anybody back then, I'll say, would spend $150 on a pair of tennis shoes. I don't see why anybody would spend $90 on a bottle of cologne. We're never going to do it.
Right.
Okay, I can respect that. But what that allowed me to do, or what that encouraged me to do, was figure out a way to get it for myself. And we lived in a nice little neighborhood that was a safe neighborhood. And I asked my parents if they cared if I created flyers, right? We had a computer, so I could, type a little flyer up, and just went around the neighborhood to I think the 6 closest streets that I could walk to, and just put a flyer in people's mailboxes offering to mow their lawn. Didn't matter the size, for $10.
Wow.
I'll just mow your yard for $10.
Wow.
And that led me to have, I don't recall, and it's been quite some time, but I'll say somewhere between 5 and 10 yards to mow every week.
Wow.
And so as a 10-year-old young man, right, I'll just say mowing 5 yards a week. I'm using my family's lawnmower, right? This blue, ugly, steel, really heavy lawnmower. It wasn't self-propelled. It was manual, right?
Right.
And so I had to keep our gas can always was filled. So it wasn't like I was making all the money, but I was making some money. I had to sharpen the blades and do things like that. But I was making, I'll say, $50 or $70 a week. And it wasn't, I didn't understand scalability. I didn't understand outsourcing labor. I just knew that, gosh, if I can do a good job and ask for referrals, I can grow more and more. I can get more and more yards and then have more and more money. And so what was fascinating about that endeavor is that ended up leading me to, at 14, in the same neighborhood, a neighbor kind of adjacent to us. I didn't know anything about him, but he had asked me to mow his lawn as well. And eventually he offered me the opportunity to take care of various properties he owns and vehicles that he owns. And he had a very successful, and I believe still does have a very successful business that's all over the country. And so I had no idea, right? Because we're in a very, just kind of middle American neighborhood. And so I'm starting to take care of his cars and his properties and all these things. That's turning into a job. And the job, again, at 14, I'm making, I don't recall, but 15 to 16 bucks an hour. It was something that it was definitely very good back in, I'll say, 1999, 98. And so I went from mowing lawns, really, if there was a message or a lesson to come from that, it was, right, when there's something that you want that you don't know how to get, there's almost always a way to get it. You just have to think about a problem that somebody else has and figure out a way to solve it. And the problem that people had in our neighborhood is they wanted a nice lawn, but right, everybody's working a job or two, right? You can see people's lawns that are taller than others. So okay, I can go solve that problem. I can get paid for that. And that was, again, out of greed. I don't think that greed is necessarily a bad thing. The only reason I started mowing lawns is because I wanted Air Jordans. I wanted the patent leather Air Jordans, and I wanted Tommy Hilfiger cologne. And that from, I'll say, consistently doing the right thing led to an opportunity that I just said yes to. I think that's another one of those lessons is when a door opens, I didn't have to know about like what this guy's businesses were. He could have told me and it wouldn't have mattered at 14. I didn't know where his properties were. I didn't know anything about the guy. He just said, if you want to do this for me full time, I'll pay you this much. Come down to my office at this day. Here's the address. Okay, I'm there, right? I don't have to know anything more than that at all. And so, that was a pretty impactful time in life. And I ended up working for him from 14 until, gosh, I think it was 19 or 20, right? And it just an incredible amount of lessons and generosity that man bestowed upon me, from just showing me more and more of what I'll say an upper class lifestyle would be. I think so much of it that I'm fortunate on is I got to experience things that weren't normal for middle class America, right? I got to experience new car purchases. I got to experience trips that were more, 5-star, and to see that these things, it was creating these beliefs in myself that I didn't realize back then, but can acknowledge now. We're in the same neighborhood, we're in the same town, but this man's life doesn't look anything like my family's life. Wow. And so if he can do it, then I know I absolutely can, because he wasn't college educated. He was just a very hardworking, very driven, very intelligent man that just didn't take any grief from anybody, right? He was very direct. You knew where you sat with him at all times. And so those lessons now is I'm probably close to the age at which he met me, if I had to guess. I bet he was, mid 40s when he employed me. I don't know for certain.
Yeah.
And I'm, 38, 39. It's like, gosh, it's to be able to help young individual with those sort of lessons is a really impactful thing to be able to do.
Oh, wow. Everything that you've shared, I'm so, so much impressed. And I know people that will be listening to this, they will be, encouraged as well. I know you have these 148 proven profit processes. We cannot talk about 148 processes, obviously. But maybe can you tell us one or two of the process?
Of course, absolutely. So part of what I get the privilege of doing inside of businesses, and whether it's a consulting type of environment, whether it's a conversation like we're having now, or whether I become an equity partner, it's looking for hidden assets that someone might have, right? Because what happens to me in most businesses is we get into our nice cadence and rhythm, right? We know what we're doing. We become more and more proficient and efficient at what we're doing. And we don't notice all the things that are going on the side, right? And it's completely normal. And I'm guilty of it in my own business as well. So I have people that consult for me. So I see more of my own blind spots. And if I look at some of those, profit processes, one would be, let's talk about how you're monetizing your data, right? So most people, right, I might have a website and an email list, and I'm going to send you emails that are, promotional emails about my own brand. But I might not have considered going out and finding an affiliate offer, someone that offers a service that's not in competition with mine, where I get paid every time that they convert. So if I email my list to your offer, whatever your thing is, and they buy your thing, you pay me. Like, okay, well, almost every business can benefit from some sort of strategic relationship like that.
Right.
Another one is the cross-sell opportunity at point of sale. That, again, if I'm selling a deck of playing cards, perhaps, right? I'm holding it up on camera. If I'm holding a deck of playing cards and I'm selling that, that's my thing. Well, as I have you on the phone, I might start to ask you, what are you going to use those playing cards for? Is it going to be a game night with your family? Are you playing poker with your buddies? Why are you buying these cards? Well, as I say, whatever they say, if I had a whole series of other things that I could sell or offer these individuals, while also packaging up that data and being able to sell the data, because now I have a buyer that not only is buying things from me, but if I'm never going to get into a poker table manufacturing type of business, well, why wouldn't, as a playing card company, why wouldn't I sell my data to a poker table manufacturer? Because they want my data. They know that people are already interested because they bought playing cards. And so there's some really simple things that are typically, tertiary to a normal business where, I don't have a fancy MBA. I didn't go to, Harvard Law School or anything like that, at least not yet. Who knows what the future will hold? But if you can, I call it stepping back from the fire. We have the burning inferno of our business and our life that's right in front of us. And what I found is if you can slide yourself back just long enough, just far enough back that you're not, blasted by the heat, you can typically start to see the fire for what it is. It's beautiful, right? It provides energy. It's this great thing, but there's all this stuff that's going on around the outside. You have little sparks that fly up. You have some embers that are smoldering on the side. Maybe you've got some wildlife that are coming up to see the fire from the other side. But in business, you sit so close to what's going on every day that most individuals that I get the privilege of meeting, they don't consider all the things that are just around the outside that would make that a better experience, right? So again, be happy to share just the list even with you to share with your listeners. I don't need anything for it. These 148 things, they sound maybe more impressive than they are. It's just the acknowledgement of seeing enough businesses and seeing, well, gosh, there's some really simple ways that everybody could make more money with what they have without creating a new product, without, hiring a brand new sales team. We typically go to these big, heavy lifting things when you need or want more revenue, right? I need to launch a new product. I need a new offering. I need to build something new. Or if you need to, have more net profit, maybe I need to fire some people. Maybe I need to get rid of some people and trim some of the fat out of the business. Well, there's 148 different things you can do before you have to do either one of those two things, which is just a different way to look at business.
I want to ask about your process. Yes, you partner with businesses to help them grow. Do you go around finding all these businesses or do they reach out to you? How does it work?
That's a great question. In my experience, it's the majority of customers or clients that I have, and now business partners, have come through referrals. And the referrals, I've got a website that is just okay, right? I'll shamelessly plug it, right? It's ryanniddel.com if you want to take a look at it, whatever. There's not a whole lot on there where what's happened is, to me, a guiding light that I live my life by is wanting to leave people better than I found them.
Mm.
And so if I get to spend 5 minutes with you, 5 hours or 5 days, I want it to be, if we never saw each other again, you could say that not only do you have a positive experience, but that something got better about your life from that. And so maybe that's a servant's heart or a sense of gratitude to the people that I get to spend time with. But what I found is that I generally just like to help people, and it's self-serving, right? It's calcifying that muscle inside of me. It's making sure I don't forget some of the things I've learned. But what ends up happening is I meet these individuals, and right, there's no agreement. I'm not trying to pitch for business. That stuff doesn't really much matter to me. Things just seem to work out. But as I found in just, I'll say, always doing the right thing. And when people say, hey, what do you do for a living? Eventually comes up, right? It's kind of normal, I think. I say, I own a couple businesses. I help some businesses grow. A little bit of everything. I don't say I downplay it, but it's just my life. It's just the largest business that I have a large piece of ownership in. I've helped grow from 5 million in revenue, and this year we'll do about 105 million in revenue. So I'm really comfortable in that $0 to $100 million mark. That's kind of my sweet spot. And eventually, when someone sees that I'm not trying to sell them, they'll ask a question, right? And who knows what the question is? Hey, my sales have gotten a little flat. Have you ever experienced that before? Well, of course, right? I think anybody that says that they haven't experienced that would probably be either very early in business or probably lying to themselves or lying to you. Absolutely, eventually that happens. So let's talk about a system or a process. I like to work on processes and then people. I think sometimes as entrepreneurs, I call a lot of us become accidental entrepreneurs, right? Mm-hmm. That you had a good idea, maybe you're working for somebody else, you stumbled into something, and by accident, you now own a company. And you didn't get that chance to, again, scoop back from the fire, or take a step back and consider all the possibilities. And when something's worked, you don't try to re-engineer it, right? Mm-hmm. Because if it's not broke, you wouldn't try to fix it.
Yeah.
And so things like sales processes, where I sit down with even just a friend that I've met and say, hey, let's just go through your sales process. Do you mind if we just look at your website, or do you mind if I cold call your sales staff? Like, let's just see what's happening. And very typically in those sort of situations, right, there's something that a fresh set of eyes points out. It's never that the business owner's, uneducated or uninspired or isn't driven. It's never those things. It's just a fresh perspective. And so I found, I'll do that over a period of time, and someone's like, oh gosh, that's a really good idea. Thank you. And then we go back to talking about normal life, whatever that would be. And it might not be that individual ever calls me again. They might never want to do business with me. It could have just been that we became friends. But, a few weeks later, or a few months later, I get a call from someone else. Hey, I was with John last night, having a bite to eat, and John brought up your name as somebody that did this thing for him. Could we talk about what it would look like if we do it for me? Sure. Right. And it's always the same conversation where it's, look, I don't know if I can help you. It'd be foolish for me to sit in my position and say, I'm absolutely certain I can help you. What I would love to do is spend 30 or 45 minutes just getting to know you and your business. I want to know what's going on. I want to know where you've come from and where you're at now. I'd like to know, in a perfect world, where do you end up? Mm-hmm. And what do you think the things are that are slowing you down from getting from where you're at now to where you want to arrive to? And if there's things I've done before or things I feel really confident in, I'll share them with you. And if I don't know how to do them, I'm also going to share with you, I don't have any idea how to do that. Right? I don't have something to sell. And I think quite often that's been one of the differences for me as my career enterprises have grown. I'm not trying to sell somebody something. I only engage with someone when I'll say I'm the most selfish consultant in the world. I will not engage with someone unless I am 150% certain I'm going to massively exceed their expectations. Right? Because it's not going to help me. It's not going to help the person I'm in front of. It's not even an ego thing. It's more of a thing of, look, I want this to be a long-term relationship. It's one of the most difficult things for all of us to do is to find that client, right? The cost of a client acquisition is always very high.
Right.
But what I want is a high lifetime customer value. So I want to be in someone's life for 5 years, not 5 months. And so the relationship and the care that I provide that relationship is in a custom to that level of, I want to be in your life for 5 years from now, hopefully as a business partner, right? I don't have any problem sharing that with individuals I speak to. In a perfect world, I'll work with you as a consultant for the next 6 months, maybe longer. You tell me where you want to get to, and that's where we'll chase. But when we get there, there's probably a bunch more levels we can go to. And I'd like the opportunity to have a conversation around becoming a partner, and I'll buy in, right? I'm not always looking for, hey, just give me equity to a company. I understand that, someone might have worked for 10 years to be at the point they're at now. And I never want it to be a relationship that's not reciprocal, right? I want it to be that if I believe in this business enough and the business model and the owner and the operator, well, then I want to physically be all the way in. I don't want to be this, handshake partner of, okay, well, now you're taking 10% of my company. No, I'm willing to put my skin in the game as well, as they say. I'll capitalize a business if I need to.
Okay. So what type of businesses do you focus on? I'm curious to know.
Yeah. So if I look right now, what I found is there's some similarities in most businesses in different tranches of revenue. Right. And so the majority of my businesses now manufacture something, right? So I've been in the educational space before. I've had educational based businesses that are more coaching consulting businesses of their own. Okay. And right, they have their own nuances to them, but I have everything now from a kratom company that manufactures a consumable leaf that is a product that's sold in gas stations and smoke shops across the country. I've got 2 supplement manufacturing facilities that physically manufacture, gummies and tinctures and all types of things for different people across the globe. I've got a brake wear sensor manufacturer that manufactures brake wear sensors. I've got a roofing company that puts roofs on homes, right? So it's a little bit of everything. And when I say I get the privilege of being a part of. These aren't things that I solely own. I want to make sure I say that. Right. My equity position in them is anywhere between 10 and 50%.
I must ask you this, Ryan. There are negative sentiments and misconceptions about venture capitalists. Many people in this country believe that they will come in and just raid the business, lay people off, and just siphon all the money. Mm-hmm. I'm more educated. I know that's not always going to be the case. What do you have to say? And I'm not saying you should defend all venture capitalists here. What is it that many people don't know about venture capitalists?
So another really good question. I'll say that my specialty is a little more private equity than venture capitalists. So I think I'd love to set the tone on what I believe the difference in the two of those are.
Okay, yeah, let's
poke at some of the both of those.
Okay.
So to me, private equity, because I've been fortunate to consult with people and help them grow their businesses, and then many of them sell their businesses. Yes. I got to the point of saying, gosh, now there's some really wealthy individuals that maybe they'd be interested in putting some of their money together and we could go collectively buy a business together. And private equity is essentially that, where someone is a pool of investors are tying up their money for, my fund is 5 years. So when someone invests, it's $1 million minimum to put in the fund. When they say they're going to commit $1 million, the minute they write that check, they quote unquote can't get the money out for 5 years without penalty. The reason for that is because in private equity, it's not destroying a business and tearing apart its insides and laying people off and doing all these things, although it could be. My mindset in this is you find undervalued, underperforming businesses that, again, are brilliant businesses. Take a roofing business like I just shared. Maybe as you're listening, someone owns a roofing business and the roofing business is just stabilized, right? They're doing $2 million a year in revenue. And the guy or gal has owned the business for 5 years. And he's been at $2 million a year. Well, perhaps that individual would be looking to sell that business because they can't grow it anymore. And they'd like to sell it for, I'll make up a number, $2 million. Okay, well, if I buy that business from that owner for $2 million, I don't want to fire any of his staff. I don't want to let anybody go because The staff is the
Yeah.
secret sauce. The staff is how the actual company works. It's probably not the owner himself. And so what the private equity fund does, what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, I believe I can grow this business by some percentage over the next 2 or 3 years. And then I'll look to find somebody else to buy it from me. And so, yes, of course, sometimes during that acquisition period, sometimes there's duplication in efforts, right? Because I have a staff here that supports me. And so typically, unfortunately, it's accounting, right? Where I've got a centralized accounting group that I trust to handle all the books for the businesses. And if a company has their own accounting team, well, there's a chance they might not fit into a transition. Now, I'm not buying the business to fire the accounting people. It doesn't even dawn on me. But sometimes there's some duplication that we consider. But other than that, keeping the core nucleus of the team together that has built the company to the success that it is something that I want to leave in place. I don't want to have to go out and hire new people. And I certainly don't want to have to roll up my sleeves and, go hang shingles on a roof. That's not what was going to be best for me.
Right.
Where the venture capitalist world, to me, can be at times a little more aggressive. Venture capitalists, to me, same sort of thing, typically wealthy individuals, maybe a pool of funds together. But venture capitalists, in my experience, focus a little bit more on early stage startup businesses. They're going to start on things that they're going to come in and put cash down and maybe a line of credit. They're going to want their hands in the business a little bit, but they're going to take large chunks of equity from the business that can hamper its growth in the future. Now, I'm not against venture capitalists. I know a lot of venture capitalist guys that are really great guys. And I know a lot of private equity guys that are really big jerks. So it's certainly not a one size fits all type of conversation. But what I've really found is private equity is a slower, longer term look, where venture capitalists into their business model, there's a certain amount of cash that they deploy. They just know the deals aren't going to work the right way. Like hedge funds and venture capitalists, it's a more aggressive, to me, it's somewhat at times a little more predatory style of investing.
Right.
Where you might have to strip out some companies to recoup your investment. Right. And at least in my world, in my personal private equity fund, it's really conservative. It's not meant for the hyper growth. Now, I wouldn't be against a hyper growth company, of course, right? Because then everybody wins.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm looking for those companies that are 3 to 5 years old or older that have just hit a place where they don't know how to grow anymore. And the owners are just kind of bored. And so that's really how the consulting comes into play, right? I'm having the conversation from a consultant standpoint. I'm seeing these opportunities and I'm sharing, look, I'll give you the roadmap. I'll help you. But on the background, if you just want to cash out right now, here's about what I think your company's worth. Now, if you take that, I'm still going to do the same thing I just told you should do. But if you don't have the stomach or appetite to do that, myself and my team do. And I don't want to let go of anybody in your team. So specifically, I would rather have the owner maintain, 15 or 20% ownership, even when I buy it, because I know I'm going to sell it again. And I want him to win, him or her to win the second time over. Again, if they maintain 20% ownership and I buy 80%, and then I grow the business by 500%, well, that individual just sold this company twice for the same dollar amount.
That's right.
Right? He or she has won 2 times over.
That's right.
Which is really, to me, the way the world should work. I think at a certain point, most deals can benefit everybody involved. And I think too often, especially as we get in the investment banking world, I don't care if it's private equity, hedge funds, venture capitalists, everybody's looking for like that last nickel. Everybody's looking to just grind everything out of it and make sure they win. And in their mind, it's a zero-sum game that if I win, you have to lose. Yeah. And I've approached deals much differently than that. Now, they're smaller deals, right? My deals are $20 million and under are the deal size. But I like knowing that I can see a business owner that I bought his business walking around anywhere in the world, and he or she would want to sit down and have a bite to eat with me, and we'd be friends, and it wouldn't be like, man, you screwed me over, you took my business, you fired my employees. Like, right. That just doesn't make me feel good. I'm more of, I'll say, I'm not comparing myself with this individual at all, but more of a Warren Buffett type of methodology, right? His thing was invest in good companies with good operators, with good profit margins, and help them just operate a little bit better. Right. That's it. It can be just that simple.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you very much for clarifying that for us. That's very important. So as we are rounding up, Brian, what is success to you?
Oh, wow. What a question. That is such a profound question. My opinion of success has changed quite a bit. At this point in my life, success is the ability to choose to do what I want, when I want, with who I want.
I like that. I like that.
When I have when I have the ability to do any of those things at any time, I'll feel that I'm successful.
Okay. So, Ryan, you mentioned something. You said you like to leave people better than you found them. Definitely today, with this conversation with you, I must tell you that you have passed that condition. You've definitely left me better. I've learned a lot from this conversation with you. This is awesome. I know my audience, they will find this very useful. I have lots of small business owners out there that listen to this show. They are going to find this useful, and I like the mindset. People can grow. You are there. You are passionate to help businesses grow. Thank you very much for all this. So as we are closing, how can people reach out to you? How can my audience connect with you? I know you are on social media, so if you want to leave your social media handle.
Yeah, so absolutely. Thank you. So social media, whether it's Twitter, probably most active on Twitter and LinkedIn at this point. I have a little team that helps syndicate some content for me. So it's just Ryan Niddel on every platform. That's RyanNiddel. Yeah. And that's again, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. My website's ryaniddel.com. If you drop a comment, it is me that would respond back to it. So right out, I have to take this as this little tangent for just a second. I find it to be challenging to help know what to share on social media, because I don't have this thing that I don't personally need my name in lights. I don't need to be this big personality that everybody knows. What I do want to do is, again, just make sure that what I share helps someone do something different.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this back and forth where, people at this point come to me and offer me their services, right? To follow me around with the camera maybe, and, make me this big personality. And everybody's got a sales pitch, and I respect that. But what's most important to me on all my social handles is that I just am actually sharing what really works real time. It's not hyperbole. It's not something I read in the book that I don't know if it's going to work. It's real life things that I'm really going through. So again, if you follow me, I would love to connect with you. Feel free to drop me a DM. It'll be me that responds, and really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much. It's been fun, right? Thank you for your time.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
All right.